Amensol Shadow, The Fox and the Wolf, Part 5.
With aching face and throbbing tail, the wolf adventured more. The little fox was thankful so for all he'd done before. The fox now smelled a great new scent. A goose was in the land. "Follow me," said Fox with glee, and Wolf stayed close at hand. The little fox chased down the scent. It came from in a cave. So strange a goose would venture here. Now this would be its grave. Cole clung to the side of the wall for dear life. He fought back tears as his little fingers dug into the cut stone of the rampart as he hung off the inside edge of the wall. "Help!" he screamed as loud as he could. The odds of anyone hearing in the commotion would be slim, even with the warriors running past his position back and forth on the rampart. Nobody can hear me, he thought. The wall was 20 cubits high, and the fall could kill him, definitely wound him badly. His hands found some holds in the broken rock surface atop the wall that gave him some hope, and he swung one leg up, and it found a grip as well. He pulled his body almost parallel when the stone his foot was stuck on broke free, and his body swung back down, the force dislodging his right hand as he scraped along the wall like a pendulum. He cried out in fear, "Help me, please!" Corinna pushed the hair back from the teary-eyed face of her son. It was his 10th birthday, and the year most boys started their ascent to manhood. All of his friends had been given a real practice sword from their fathers, with the understanding that now you are old enough to begin learning the way of battle and bravery. Cole's father was not at his birthday. He had never been to any of Cole's birthdays, and Cole resented him for it today. Corinna continued to stroke his hair, sitting beside him against the wall, outside the stables of her father's ranch in the plains close by Havensong. The air was warm, and the sun bathed them there in the grass. It smelled so sweet from the flowers that grew wild in the fields surrounding the grounds, but despite the beautiful day and the break from battle, Corinna's only son was hurting, and she wanted to fix it. "Did I ever tell you about the first arrow I ever shot?" Corinna asked mysteriously. Cole shook his head, all of a sudden interested in something other than self-loathing. "Well, my father gave me a Mirkwood bow on my 10th birthday. It had been crafted by an elf of Fairfell, who had raised your father, Rue of the Ashen Order. Your father and I met and played as children as our fathers did business. Anyway, my father gave me the bow and told me to mount up. If I was going to learn to shoot, I would learn to shoot on the move. Anyone can shoot still, he used to tell me." "He told me that last week," Cole mumbled, still trying to wallow in sadness. Corinna chuckled. "So, he showed me how to knock it and draw. He showed me how to aim, but he wouldn't let me shoot. Once he was sure I knew the basics, he told me to hold on and aim for a bale of hay that was out in the field. Actually, it had been right over there, by that mare," Corinna said as she pointed out into the field. "No matter what, you hit that target," he said to me, and slapped my horse and whistled. It took off almost faster than I could control, and as I tried to steady myself in the saddle, I finally knocked my arrow and drew at my target. And I gazed down the shaft, trying to absorb the bouncing gallop, and all of a sudden, my horse was startled by a viper in the grass, and it threw me just as I was about to shoot. I landed in the grass hard, and hit my head on a small stone in the ground. See that scar right there? I sat up, grabbing my head and whimpering, and that's when I heard Pa yelling, "What did I say? What did I say?" And so I yelled to him that I bumped my head, and he yelled back, "No matter what!" And the horse was bucking a ways off, trying to trample the snake, so I yelled back, "But I need to get my horse!" So he said, "You can walk and breathe, can't you?" And Cole chuckled through his mopey face. Corinna continued, "So I figured I'd better do what he said. So I ran toward the horse to get it under control while re-knocking my arrow, and I drew and looked back over my shoulder as I ran, trying to steady my stride, and I let the arrow fly." "Did you hit it, Ma? Sent a bale?" Cole inquired excitedly, forgetting his problems for a moment. "Well, that arrow shot through the air and across the field, and past the bale, and past another bale, and landed where my mother had been growing some greens and got stuck in one of her baskets. I wasn't even close." Cole laughed. Corinna smiled back at him. So Pa came up to me as I got the horse and made sure the snake was gone, and he looked at the gash on my head from the fall, and he hugged me and smiled. I told him sorry that I had missed the target and sorry for tearing up Ma's basket, and he said I had learned the most important lesson that day, more important than shooting straight. The lesson was this: the chance of success is 0 when you cease to persist. Corinna turned to face her son straight on, and she looked into his eyes very seriously. You see, Cole, fate will never give you success. It will always make you work for it. And although not everyone who persists receives it, everyone who receives it persisted. Corinna pulled an object out from behind her back. It was rolled up in a fine linen scarf, and she handed it to the boy. Cole held it in his hand and felt the weight of it. This, son, Corinna said, is from your father, and how he wishes he could be here to give it to you himself. He wanted nothing more than to live a quiet life with you and me here on the ranch, and away from wars and kings and duties beyond this home. But fate did not give him the success he longed for, even though he persisted, and it did not give you much chance from the time you came from my womb, fatherless. But you have a chance to grab your success, if you persist. Cole unwrapped his present and found a black-handled dagger, half cubit in length, with Hanai carved into the grip. This was his father's dagger. Corinna had saved it for him for this day, and Cole grinned about as big as his mouth would allow, as his mother stood up beside him and put on her commander face, as Cole called it. So, Cole, why are you stopped? Persist, boy, she said as she kicked his leg and drew her sword, goading him into practicing. His eyes lit up, and he shot up and ran to her, weapon drawn. Cole's terror turned to aggression as his body swung back, and his free hand reached up and found its familiar hold. His arms and hands were burning, but he kept hearing his mother's voice, telling him to persist. He yelled as he swung his legs as hard as he could, and his foot made it all the way to the top of the rampart, and he pulled the rest of his body up with what strength he had in his arms, and rolled up onto the walkway. Boy! Hollered a soldier ducked behind the battlements on the wall. This is no place for you. The wall wizards and Asari are tearing everything up out here. Get inside for cover. The soldier turned around and shot another arrow down at the horde of revenant that were forming ranks for a push against the second defensive wall. The warriors on the ground were forming up just outside the second and third gates to engage in open warfare with cover from above. Lorne, the army's commander, was caught in a skirmish on the edge of the formation with a group of soldiers. Cole watched as the soldiers on the wall drew back his arrow and launched it through the dust and smoke-filled battlefield. It soared just past Lorne's helmet and into a revenant soldier coming to double up on the commander. Lorne looked up and pointed at the soldier's position with a quick sign of gratitude, and he turned back around and pulled a flag out of his sheath around his waist and made quick gestures in the air with it, signaling his troops to form a new rank to his right, effectively walling off the attacking forces to one portion of the space between the second and third walls. It was safe to turn the defenses away from the fourth and fifth gates on the outer wall. The war wizards were wreaking havoc on that side of the defenses against Asari and his westernmost forces. Lorne stepped back from the front lines to view the battle as his warriors jumped in and filled his hole. Aliston ran, stumbling to his location at his emergence from the lines. Have you seen Cole? Aliston shouted at him over the roars and screams of war. Aliston was covered in dust and blood, his shield and mace spattered with more. Aliston had been caught in the battle as the revenant soldiers charged the war wizard's location. The war wizards challenged Asari after descending from who knows where. Aliston had been standing behind them as they approached Asari. The fire wizard had said nothing as he clenched his fist, moving in closer. Asari had beckoned his forces to come through the gate and attack on his command. You should have brought a weapon to this fight, little man, he had said to the fire wizard. At that, the fire wizard thrust his hands out to his sides as they ignited in bright yellow flame. He took 2 strides and leapt 15 cubits all at once and drove his knee into an unsuspecting Asari's chest, sending him sprawling and tumbling through the dirt behind him. The lightning wizard had stayed put, seeming to be uninspired to get involved yet. Asari lumbered up slowly from the ground, obviously hurt by the attack, and shouted for his forces to charge. At that, Aliston had grabbed a mace and shield from an expired warrior's grip and ran toward the lightning wizard's location. About the time he caught her, she sent a bolt of lightning out of her staff and took out a whole row of revenant fighters. Blood had spilled out. hitting the wall and crumbling down parts of the battlements and sending a jolt through Aliston's shield and mace, blowing him off of his feet. After regaining his senses, he kept his distance and fought alongside Avendir's elite guard between the war wizards. The war wizards had obviously meant it when they said that they were against their enemy, but not specifically with them. They continued to fight with a reckless violence that left walls destroyed and men and elves injured in their quest to snuff out the revenant forces of Asari. In the middle of the battle, Aliston had caught a glimpse of who appeared to be Cole running up one side of the interior walls. He had been carried inside, away from Avendir after the war wizards showed up, but it seemed he was able to slip back into the fray to watch history being made this day. Cole should have been safe the entire time, if not for the arrogance of Avendir. He took off in the boy's direction, and Aliston could not let anything happen to that boy. Cole was all that was left of Corinna. Cole was all that was left for Aliston. Corinna's face lit up as she laughed. Her favorite pastime, when not killing revenant soldiers, was teasing Aliston. She found his altruistic nature so sincere that it often came across as parody. If anyone were ever to make fun of selfless and caring individuals, they would just mimic Aliston. You can't give your wishes away, Aliston. That's against the rules. You have to use them for yourself. Again. So, you're stranded on a deserted island, and you have 3 wishes. Corinna giggled as she asked the question for the 10th time. No, seriously, I'd wish that others who shared my fate would be rescued by their countrymen. I would hate for that to happen to someone else, Aliston said, half smiling, but half serious. You are missing the point, Corinna roared back, still laughing at him. This is supposed to show what things you care about and would want with you. Well, I do care about other people stranded on other islands, Aliston interrupted. This only made Corinna laugh harder. Normally, Aliston got upset when others disregarded his heartfelt sentiments, but seeing Corinna's laugh felt better than any good deed he had ever done. It was a rare occasion when they had enough time to wind down between battles in preparation at Havensong and at the Silent Sanctum. Storms had blown through the plains and had brought much of the fighting and traveling to a standstill and allowed for some time for rest and recuperation. Okay, Aliston finally said, settling down and opening up a little to her. 3 things I would wish for, and they can't be to get off the island. Let's see. He got up from his chair and went and plopped down on the bed beside Corinna, where she was lounging. Corinna's quarters in Havensong were always messy due to her pressing obligations and fatigue once she stopped, so generally if they had idle time together, they spent it here in Aliston's quarters. Corinna's relaxed nature and his presence was seductive to him, although he had never had the nerve to mention the depths of his affections for her. I would ask for a mirror, a magical mirror, and this mirror would show me all of my friends and what they were doing so I could share in their lives, even from far away. Corinna watched him as he tried not to make eye contact with her. He is so shy for a fighter and leader, she thought. Second, I would wish that none of them would ever forget me or what I stood for. Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, Corinna grinned at him, and Aliston paused for a moment, silent. He worked up the courage to stare into her beautiful brown eyes, and as he did, her joking smile shifted to a nervous smile, as her eyes darted back and forth between his stare and her fidgeting fingers. The 3rd thing I would wish for, Aliston continued, would be to bring Hanai back to you. For Cole, for our people. He was the best of us without even trying to be, without even wanting to be. And he carried that burden every day because he knew that he had to, because nobody else could. Corinna's smile retreated begrudgingly. She shifted her gaze uncomfortably to the window to find escape from her feelings of loss. You're not playing fair again, Corinna said, finding it hard to breathe. This was too emotional to keep her guard up. Her breaths came short, just being brought back to the pain and loss of her husband. Because you are supposed to wish for things for you, not for me. She sniffed, trying to fight off tears. Aliston no longer had to force himself to make eye contact with Corinna. He couldn't take his eyes off her. Such a strong warrior, tough in battle, and in discipline, courage to a fault, and yet disarmed with such soft words. He was drawn in by her mysterious and conflicting nature. I'm playing fair, Alaston replied. Your happiness is the one thing that gives me the most joy, Corinna. Corinna let out a huff as she lost the battle with her tears. A pair rolled down her bronzed cheeks, and she looked away, not wanting to lose herself completely in front of Alaston. She was tough, and did not like showing her weakness to the men around her. Unfortunately, this is just a game. In real life, we don't get 3 wishes granted. But we do get unlimited wishes unfulfilled, Corinna said, her nose already stuffy from the crying. I'll never see what could have been, how great our lives could have turned out. And now I have only bloodstains and regret to show for my 30 years. And Cole, interjected Alaston. You will always have a piece of him with you and Cole. Yeah, I guess all I really have left is Cole. And more war is coming to try to separate us. Life is just a winding path through mountains, Alaston. It's rough and tiring. And you can't see the end, so you don't know how long it will be until you reach the other side. It's like Hanai and I were forced to ride as fast as we could through that pass, take every shortcut. And I don't want my pass to end before I raise my son. Corinna looked up at Alaston. I don't want to be this great warrior of men everyone claims I am. I just want to be a good mother. This must be what Hanai felt like so often. Hey, I know you. I'm confident in one thing. No matter what it is, mother, warrior, commander. You persist, right? Your motto to your troops. Alaston said, trying to lighten the conversation. Yeah, Corinna replied, wiping the tears from her cheeks. She sat up on the bed. Light was just beginning to peek over the horizon. The storm clouds abated. Alaston moved next to her, both facing the rising sun. And you'll always have me. He couldn't stop the words, but his body was fighting as he dropped his gaze to the floor. His shyness regained some ground, but it was unable to keep his heart from controlling his tongue. Who knows? Maybe one day, when this war is over, our mountain passes will intersect, and we won't have to walk through it alone anymore. Alaston had never been so bold about his feelings for her. He wished he had his words back. Corinna slowly sloped over to one side and laid her head gently on Alaston's shoulder. I guess I have Cole. And a promise, then, she said, and she slipped her hand into Alaston's as it laid lonely in his lap. Alaston was caught off guard by the soft and warm gesture from her after so long wanting it. He had to be straightforward with her finally. Corinna, I... Shut up, Alaston, Corinna cut in. Just shut up and watch the sunrise with me. Corinna sat there, resting her head on him, her hands safely tucked in his, and they watched the sunrise. As the sun hid itself further behind the horizon, Alaston climbed back up to the second wall to search for a better vantage point. It was getting harder to see. He did not expect to find Cole in the middle of the serious fighting between the second and third walls. But in so much chaos, he could be staring at one person beside him and never notice him. Where would he feel safe enough to watch the battle? He started back down the rampart, hoping that he had missed him. And suddenly, Cole emerged from behind an archer, waving down to the battlefield, and then hid behind the battlements. Alaston ran toward him, screaming out his name in vain. All the archers and mages on the wall were all just obstacles to overcome, slowing his run to a series of quick darts. He knew this wall well, having helped design and build it. Second wall, 1,760 cubits long. He was between the second and third gates, halfway. Average running stride, 2 cubits. 440 steps away. He shook his head as he tried to keep his eyes on Cole. He had just crossed over the first gate when Cole jumped up all of a sudden and ran down the stairs next to the wall and shot across the relatively open space and cover. Alaston took his eyes off of Cole to see what it was that got his attention. Across the open space that separated the man of war from the apocalyptic battle of the Titans on the western front, there walked a solitary man across the no-man's land. At his distance, Alaston could not make out who the figure was, but he didn't need to. All signs pointed to the king. Avendir was going to war with Zari. A small bloody stream was pasted to Avendir's face. He didn't take time to wipe it. There was no need. More blood was to be spilled today, and he had been out of the battle far too much already. Their reinforcements were slim enough after the long battle fought earlier today. The magicians were mostly worthless, having drained their mana beyond being able to continue. The regular army was tired, and there was not enough replacements to rotate them. This battle would not last long at the rate it was going, and Avendir didn't trust the two wizards that had come. They were not fighting for them, they were fighting for themselves, which meant they could not count on them as their salvation, wherever their self-interest laid. They claimed to be sons of Terminus. Was it true? There was no sign of it other than their word. They fought against Asari. By his observance, they had wounded several of his men. Who knows, maybe even killed some. There was no hero, no son of Terminus looking out for his people. That burden, honor, right belonged to him. Cracks of thunder roared as the three juggernauts jumped, bolted and clashed across the walls, through gates, off the cliffs that funneled into the sanctum. Nobody was going to stop his vengeance today. Asari was his and his alone. What happened there? Wait, for me. A dim voice called from behind him. He paused for a brief moment and turned his head slightly to see if he could make it out without losing focus on his main objective. For me, I'm coming. The voice grew louder, a familiar voice. The son of his teacher, his protector, his friend, was coming to be by his side. He turned and faced the boy who was running almost at the pace of falling. He bent down to meet the boy as he approached. Cole arrived and threw himself on the neck of Avendir. Avendir, don't go, Cole yelled, still squeezing Avendir with no intention of letting go. The sons of Terminus are here to save us. You don't have to fight anymore. My boy, Avendir responded, pulling him back and looking into his dirty, tear-stained face. You and I, we are different than a lot of these other fighters here, older warriors, burdened down by the hazy memories of a bygone world. Myth is not our home. Terminus is our home. Asari doesn't rule over us. We rule our own fates. It is time you realize the truth. We are sons of Terminus. You and I. A generation of new leaders. New kingdoms. Avensong was built to pay homage to our past. But we will build a new home. A home for us who are not bound by the old ways, but will look ahead to what is here in this new world. A world that belongs to us now. We just have to take it. And the two stared at each other for a moment as the commotion around them blurred into fog. The sounds faded out. This is our home, Avendir continued, and we defend what is ours. We can't rely on others fighting for us. Our fathers and mothers gone. Our houses are gone. A lot of our friends are gone. All we have left. Avendir looked down and took the boy's two hands in his and raised them up to eye level. Are these? This. Avendir placed his hand on the boy's head, and a faint smile crept upon him as he remembered his friend. Come on, Han. Come get me. Avendir ran in circles as Hanai filled the trough for the horses in the stable. This was Hanai's favorite place to be, at the home of his favorite person, Corinna. He didn't mind doing the mundane chores here. Back at the King's Hall, it was all studying and training and babysitting. He started brushing his horse, then stopped for a second and looked down and sighed. I guess 2 out of 3 isn't too bad. Avendir, we're in the country, with fields and trees and literally anything else you could think of. Isn't there anything else you could be doing right now besides annoying me? And I went back to brushing, but with a little more consternation. The king has decreed that I shall practice twice a day with you until I am strong. Avendir yelled back in an irritating sing-song voice. He was still circling and swinging his sword, and accidentally banging it into pretty much everything. Lucky for him, the horses had seen combat, so they disregarded his youthful ignorance. And I finished brushing the horse and put the tools away. He turned to the young 13-year-old prince. Listen up, muck-mutt. I didn't drag you out here to pester me to death. he scolded Avendir as he slapped him on the back of his head. I was doing you a favor to get you out of all that schooling, not so you could bring it with you. I'm here to spend time with Corinna, and that's it. Ooh, you want to kiss her? He smirked as he salivated all over the back of his hand, pretending to be intimate in a way that only makes sense to 13-year-old boys. I'm warning you, you little turd, Hanai said, trying not to be embarrassed by a child. Hanai had grown up in many respects, much faster than children normally do. His situation demanded it. He learned to take care of himself, as not to be a burden on his caretakers, since he had no guardian still living after the collision. But for all his maturity, he was still just 17, and Avendir still got the best of him every once in a while. Come on, Han. What am I supposed to do if you're off drooling all over Corinna? Avendir's frustrations were written all over his whining face. You brought me out here in the middle of nowhere to leave me? I thought we were going to get to do stuff together. Hanai's irritation softened as he saw the genuine admiration Avendir had for him. As irritating as he was, Hanai always cared for him as an older brother would have. So he did what any brother would have done in this situation. Ugh, fine. You're so annoying, you know that? Avendir's mope turned back into a sly grin. Okay, Corinna knows a place down by a stream where we can all go shoot later. But you're going to give me some time to be with her without screwing things up for me. So go find something to do for a little while. Like what? There's nothing to do out here, Avendir argued. Hanai reached down and grabbed Avendir's hands and held them up to his face. No matter where you go, you'll always have these. And Hanai swung his hand around and slapped Avendir in the back of his head once more. And this. Hanai spun around and took off for the barn to find Corinna. Avendir yelled after him. I hate you, just so you know. And Avendir looked down at his hands and thought, now what? Aliston raced to catch up with Avendir and Cole. He gained some ground while they were stopped, the young king stopping to say something to the young boy. He hoped he was explaining to him he needed to leave the battlefield. He knew how much Cole wanted to be part of this. The boy literally had nothing to lose anymore, and this war had cost him his parents and home, and he was looking to fill that void with something or someone. Avendir was embracing Cole, and then stood, still facing the boy. Aliston hoped Cole wasn't too upset. There was no way to be sure neither he nor Avendir would return from this battle, and that had to weigh heavily on Cole. It wouldn't be easy to send him back into the sanctum, he thought. Avendir! Aliston cried after him. Avendir looked up and saw Avendir approaching, covered in dirt and blood from the fighting. Aliston, glad you're still with us, Avendir said, resolve staring in his face. You ready to end this? Aye, he said, and he looked down at Cole. Did you tell Cole where to meet up in the sanctum? I'm not telling Cole what to do, Avendir said, anticipating this confrontation. The boy is a citizen of this land, and he has a right to fight for what is his. Who am I to deprive him of that? He is a child, Aliston roared back at the king. Aliston had never been so angry and bewildered. How could anyone even think of allowing a small boy to go confront gods among mortals? It was madness. He is a man, Avendir fought back, stepping into Aliston's face. Do children weep over their deceased mothers and fathers? Do children work to keep food on their own table, with no one to care for them? Cole became a man when Corinna fell at the god-forsaken gates of Havensong, and you, in your piety and your pathetic cowardice, would stand and deny him the only thing he has left, vengeance for the loss of all he has in this world. There's no more running, Aliston. The world is burning down around us. Go crawl back into your hole if you wish, but don't act the wise man leading others to follow you. Aliston's grip on his mace tightened his hand, his knuckles turning white. Cole, come along, Aliston said, as seriously as he had ever looked at him before. Cole, you must go. This battle is far too dangerous. It will only be in the way. If the king and I and the soldiers can end this, there's no need for you to put your life at risk. What would your mother want for you? Aliston asked him. Cole, what would your mother want? Avendir slid one foot in front of the boy, half hiding him from Aliston. People have held me back ever since I was a child, Aliston. Acted as if they were shielding me, protecting me, keeping me from harm. As good guardians should, Aliston interjected. Avendir didn't stop. But in my life as a child, I was shot, dragged through the wilderness, almost assassinated. I've been burned, slashed, bloodied. There's no stopping fate. Avendir thought of the time he did not get with Hanai, the closest thing he ever had to a brother. He thought of the farm, Hanai running off and leaving him. He thought of the last time he saw Hanai alive. Hanai had again sent him away to be safe, and he was captured, and Hanai had died trying to recover him. He remembered Hanai's face turning pale as he spoke his last words to Avendir's father, Amensol. "Stay here. I don't want to leave," had been his last words. And that moment branded into Avendir's mind was how Avendir had felt his entire childhood, whisked from one place to another, only to sit by himself. No one stayed with him, but when they had stayed, he was forced to go. He lost so much time with Hanai that he wished he had back, regrets that ran deeper than he knew as they came rushing to his mind. He would not let that be his legacy to another. "Cole's not going to be abandoned by me, Aliston. He has lost too much. We will live or die, side by side, and he will not suffer the same fate I did at the passing of his father, my friend." Cole looked up at Avendir at the mention of his father. There was so much he had not learned from Avendir about his father. There was so much more that he wanted to know. And at the mention of his father, Cole's heart went out to Avendir, and he knew he had to follow him, to stay with him, to protect his king and his friend no matter what. Aliston held out his hand once more for the boy to take, and Avendir had pulled him away the last time. He was hoping that this time, in the face of death, in the face of his mother losing one more thing in this world, and for the affection he knew he had in Aliston, he would be wiser than this foolish young ruler and choose life. He needed him to. Cole slowly pulled his hands together, fidgeting as he was torn between them. One of his hands fell away from the other, and his fingertips slid down the smooth leather strapping on the hilt of his father's dagger. He gently released it from his sheath, tied to his belt, and pulled it to his face. Hanai. He looked at the lettering expertly carved into the blade, and he thought of his father, he thought of his mother, and he thought of vengeance. Aliston's countenance fell hard, his face no longer able to hold back his distress. "Cole, you don't have to do this. You can choose another path," Aliston pleaded, close to tears. Cole looked again, down at the long dagger in his hand. "If I can choose, then I choose to fight," Cole spoke, softly, and still unsure of his decision. "It's what my father would have done." Aliston thought back to the young 4-year-old boy who was brought out of the woods by Amensol, scared and alone. He saw that face now in Cole. He looked so much like his father, but Aliston knew Hanai would never have followed such a reckless plan as this. Dying for a king seeking revenge and glory for its own sake was what Hanai hated about his life in service to the king. And Aliston had never taken the time to teach Cole about his father. Grinna had never taken time to pour into him all that his father had been, and what he stood for. When had there been time? Wars and famines and weather had all enticed them away from taking time to pour into this boy. And now it was too late. This boy was offered a chance to become a man by a king, and there was nothing Aliston could do to stop it. Then we end it, Aliston said, accepting his defeat, and set his mind on things other than the consequences of his actions. The three turned and faced the ongoing melee between the high mortals, seemingly fighting merely for the right to claim victory over the other. Clouds of dust and ash swirled around the high cliffs and walls of the sanctum as bolts of lightning and bursts of flame lit up the inside like some evil and calamitous storm. Aliston took it all in, this battle beyond their lowly abilities. He took a deep breath and exhaled it slowly, and then set his jaw. We end it.